What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my builds guide and review of Ymir, Ascended Celica, Kamui, Shadows of Valenentia'S, Atlas, and also Brigand Boss. So we've got Ymir as a green cavalry dragon, which is a pretty unique class, and she's got a preferred weapon in Ever Living Breath. So this provides her with +3 attack, and if she uses any kind of rally or movement assist, then she can heal up 10 HP to herself and the allies within 2 spaces of her, and she can also neutralize any kind of penalty on those allies. So this can be really good for healing up your allies without actually being a healer or without running something like Ardent Sacrifice, and this can also help you get rid of any kind of debuffs, which can be really helpful in something like Summoner Duels. She can also get +5 to all of her stats and has an auto follow-up with this weapon. So Ymir is not really too fast, so this auto follow-up does help her. So this weapon is a good mix of support and also for helping her in combat. But the thing which really makes her unique is going to be her slotty skill, Ever Living Domain. So just like Nifl and Muspel, she has her own domain skill, and this is also a joint drive skill. So she can benefit from this herself and also any kind of allies within 2 spaces. So she can boost up +4 defense and resistance to herself and the allies within 2 spaces, and she also has the joint drive miracle. Now keep in mind that this miracle is a lot different than what we have seen many times, like on Weapon Refine of Tearfang for example, because that is going to be taking the HP at start of combat, but this joint drive miracle of Ymir actually takes in the in-combat HP. So if the first attack of the enemy knocks you out of the 75% HP range, then you don't really get miracle, but if it does not, then you can pretty much get the miracle effect and survive with 1 HP. So she can benefit from this herself and also provide this to her allies. And the best use case of this miracle is to avoid the one-shots, because even if the opponent just drags you to 1 HP, if they're not able to double you, then they cannot really one-shot you. Ascended Fiorm and Valentine Lucina are some of the main examples of this, and how many people with those units use Ymir to make them survive. And also a lot of fast units who have got null follow-up can also just survive with this joint drive miracle. And this can also be useful to units who can get some kind of damage reduction on foe's first attack, and just make sure that they do not fall below 75% HP on opponent's first attack. So in that case, Joint Drive Miracle can definitely be pretty helpful and fun, but overall I would say that Ymir is not going to be that insane of a unit, because this Joint Drive Miracle is not as strong as the Miracle effect which we have seen before in some of the weapons. It is still really good, don't get me wrong, but it is mostly going to be useful with certain teams and with certain units, and I think she shines most in like Aether Raids defense, in the Katria Balls, in the Dark Season, or in Summoner Duels S, where you can just have her with, Ascended Fiorm and make her survive the Deadeye of Crom. So that's where Ymir is really going to be helping you just survive those one-shots and make it really annoying for the enemies. She can also be used for some of the fun teams, like with a level 1 Nyx, where she can provide the Joint Drive Miracle and the Nyx can hit super hard despite being level 1. She can also be useful with some of the offensive strategies, like with Vantage in the Aether Raids Chaos Season, because her Joint Drive Miracle can actually work exactly at 75% HP, so you can allow your Vantage units to survive Hardy Bearing units because of this kind of Joint Drive Miracle effect. So she can definitely bring something unique to the table, especially with certain units and in certain strategies. But she's not the kind of unit that you just put on any kind of team, because the Joint Drive Miracle specifically wants you to not be below 75% HP on the first attack in the combat. So if you want to use Ymir, she's actually going to be pretty functional with her base kit alone. You can just have her with Reposition or Glimmer, and Reposition is helpful because she can still trigger her effect with a movement assist, and you can just run Distant Guard so that if you're maybe using her with Ascended Fiorm, then she can get more bulk out of this. So that is an option, and this is the Summoner Duels S build that you can run on her. I've definitely seen a couple of people use her in Summoner Duels S. So that is going to be a pretty common competitive use of her, especially because Duochrome is just so popular in that game mode. But keep in mind that if Duochrome is with Bride Katria, then he can still Brave Attack and kill your Ascended Fiorm if he gets the Triangle Attack effect. You can also run her in Pawns of Loki, and that is one of the game modes where I think she's going to be really annoying, because you can just have her as a dragon, and dragons and the sword, lance, and axes are a pretty good combo to get a lot of, high HP units and also get good scoring. So she's definitely going to be a pretty solid unit in Pawns of Loki, especially to be given to your friends, and she's also going to be very annoying when you face her yourself. She can also be used in Aether Raids defense in the Dark Season. The Dark Season specifically with Medius, because Medius can provide you the immunity to Bolt Tower, and that is just needed with Ymir's ever-living domain. So I would only really recommend her with him so that it can protect your team and make your team even more annoying. Because usually with the Dark Season teams with Medius, we see save units being used, and there Ymir can just provide them with the survivability even against some of the fatal hits. So there she could be used with a more invested build with maybe a ruse skill if you want to. So the ruse skill can also provide you with the guard effect, which can prevent the enemy from triggering their specials and just making it a bit easier for you to survive them. So that's an option, but you can always just use her with the Trace skill. And Rally Up Attack is a pretty good skill that she already has in her base kit. And if you set up your team right, then she can pretty much go ahead of your team and just rally them up with this Rally Up skill and provide the Drive Miracle to the allies that are going to be coming forward to attack. You can also use her in Aether Raids offense with advantage strategies, like I said before. Especially in the Chaos Season, she could be used there, and she can be used to provide a way of getting into Vantage safely, but she can also be used if you're already going to be using Winter Bernadetta, because like I said before, if she's not going to be helping you survive and get into the Vantage range, then she actually gives you the protection against a lot of the hardy bearing units, which can still just take out your Vantage unit, especially in Aether Raids Chaos. So she's a pretty nice tech option against the hardy bearing units if you're a Vantage enthusiast. And if you lack Winter Bernadetta, then she could be another option to get into the Vantage range essentially with her Drive Miracle, so that's an option. And a ruse skill can always be pretty nice for a Vantage unit like Shadows of Valentia Pala, for example, who does have that adaptive damage. Or maybe if you're using some other Vantage unit, the ruse effect and the support is always pretty nice. And you can also run her at max investment with a more combat oriented build, and her resistance is pretty nice, so she can get that damage reduction and be a lot more tanky, especially with her Joint Drive Miracle. And finally, if you want to use her in Arena, then she could use G-Dual Cavalry 4 and run the Trace skill, and this is especially going to be really helpful for surviving the duochromes with maybe some of your faster units that have null follow-up, so that you can just tank him safely. There are just so many threats in Arena, especially in the higher echelons in tier 21, that can just one-shot, so the Drive Miracle can be quite helpful there. Ascended Celica is a colorless infantry mage this time, and in my opinion she's the star of this banner despite Ymir having that Joint Drive Miracle and also being on the thumbnail of the trailer. Ascended Celica also has that miracle effect, and she's also a really solid offensive unit with her high base attack of 43 and high base speed of 42. Not to mention she also has Soul of Zofia just like Legendary Celica. But unlike Legendary Celica, she doesn't have much of a trouble getting into Soul of Zofia range because of having this kind of miracle effect in her weapon. So Mila's Testament is a 14 might weapon which can give her -1 special cooldown, and she can also get +6 attack and speed in combat, and she also has Null Guard built into her weapon, which is really effective for spamming specials, and she can also deal true damage based on 10% of foes' attack stat. And if she's above 25% HP, then she gets the Miracle Effect. So again, this Miracle Effect is not going to be like the Tearfang Miracle Refine. Instead, it's a lot more like Ymir. So if she does not fall below 25% HP on foe's first attack, then she can survive with her Miracle. But if not, then she's just going to be dying. So the HP threshold is a lot better than Ymir and obviously a lot more flexible. And because Ascended Celica is a much faster unit with Soul of Zofia, she can a lot of times just survive many units because unless they have a brave hit, then they're probably not going to be doubling her, and their auto follow-ups are just disabled by the null follow-up of Soul of Zofia. This miracle effect can also allow her to survive so that she can be in the desperation range of Soul of Zofia, so that can make her into a pretty nice player phase unit, and it's a lot more reliable to just fall into that range with this miracle effect. She also has Infantry Null Follow-Up as a new skill that we have, and this could be inherited to any kind of infantry unit, so it pretty much gives you the Null Follow-Up status effect at start of the turn. So this is a status effect similar to what Fallen Lilith can give with her Null Follow-Up, and this is a speed-based Null Follow-Up essentially. So this could be a pretty nice thing to be given to a lot of support units. In my opinion, Valeria is one of the better units to be given the skill because she can provide the null follow-up effect to her Gale Force allies in a light offensive team, for example, and that is really good against Medias for a lot of the Gale Force allies. And this can also just, help a Gale Force team because a lot of the Gale Force units are not going to be running null follow-up in their slot B. They're going to be occupying, their slot B with Wings of Mercy, just like Valeria is. And she can also provide good support to her ally support with her weapon as it is. Duochrome is a very flexible unit, so you can easily run Infantry null follow-up on his slot C so that he can give that to his other Infantry units. And Fallen Indian is also a pretty good option because she can give the special acceleration status effect, and with null follow-up that is pretty good for a lot of the faster units, so she's one of the better units as well to run this kind of support skill. We also have Brave Lucina, who could be run in Arena at max investment with a build like this. And Infantry null follow-up is going to be freeing up the slot B skill. Gatekeeper is also an option because he does provide the extra speed with his weapon as a support, and if you're running a ton of infantry allies, then that is useful. Reeve can provide you with the stalled support with his weapon, and for utilizing more of his, kit for just supporting your allies, Infantry null follow-up is an option. There are definitely other units who can run this skill, like August, for example, which I haven't really mentioned here. So yeah, it's not the best fodder skill because we already have many units with null follow-up in their weapon, but it can be useful with certain support units just for doubling down on that kind of support, and that's where I really enjoy this kind of skill. For building up Ascended Celica, keep in mind that any kind of Ascended unit can just get the Ascended asset without using a Floret, so you can just give her speed, and in my opinion that is the stat to Ascend because she can make use of Soul of Zofia a lot better with her Desperation and the null follow-up, and not getting doubled can literally save her life with the Miracle effect, so that's why I really value speed on Celica. If you want to invest into her kit more and if you want to get rid of Life and Death, then you can try and run Attack Speed Unity. So the bulk of Celica is not really too relevant, even with Life and Death, because she can survive with the Miracle effect. But Attack Speed Unity could be a good skill to, not have the penalty. And Life and Death can also attract a lot of the attack and speed debuffs by increasing those stats. So Attack Speed Unity can pretty much, help you with that and also give you a way of dealing with those debuffs to her offensive stats. And if you're going to be foddering off Brave Marianne, then Time Pulse is the skill to pick up. With Time Pulse, Luna becomes a one-turn special, which you can easily trigger in Soul of Zofia range with the null guard that she has got. And if you want to use her more for the in-game content, then she could function as an AoE spammer, and actually a pretty good AoE spammer compared to a lot of the other units because of the null guard built into her weapon. So on a lot of Abyssal maps and in a lot of in-game content, units are just going to be having the tier 4 stand skill, or they just have some kind of guard weapon. And because of the null guard, Celica is always going to be having her special ready with Special Spiral, and that can really help you clear a bunch of maps with 3 dancers. And one of the good things about Celica with this kind of build is that she can easily fall into the Wings of Mercy range of her dancer allies because she has got the Miracle in her weapon. So that is really helpful, and for this use case, Special Spiral is a lot better than Soul of Zofia so that he can spam those AoE specials and do a lot of damage. And you can just run Life and Death as a Sacred Seal as well to increase her visible attack stat. And if you want to use her more for competitive use, then in Aether Raids defense, she's going to be a pretty nice unit, especially with Pride Katria because, of course, why not? She's got the Null Guard effect, and with Soul of Zofia and the Miracle effect, she can be pretty annoying for a lot of save units because she can survive their attacks, and then, because of having null follow-up, she can just quad attack a lot of the save tanks as well. So you could run Flashing Blade 4 in her slot A so that she can get the true damage even more, especially when she's going to be doing the quad attacks. You could also run Attack Speed Unity actually if you want to, and just run a different special, but this can also work out. And you can run Fatal Smoke quite easily on her because she's going to be a very reliable user of this, and by having Fatal Smoke you can, pretty much try and make sure that she can attack first instead of attacking later than all of your other allies. So yeah, Fatal Smoke is really amazing and the optimal slot C skill for Aether Raids defense Celica. And the reason why this is really preferred for the Dark Season is because Elamine is going to be pretty annoying in the Anima Season and in the Chaos Season, so the quad attacks can be fully utilized in the Dark Season. And you can also run her in the Aether Raids Chaos Season with a near save armor, especially with the minus HP IV. The reason why minus HP heavy is pretty good on Celica, especially with a build like this, is because she pretty much only needs 9 HP to trigger her miracle effect, and that is pretty easy to do with noontime as a special. So I know this build does look a bit gimmicky. I mean, we're trying to use an offensive unit as a tank, but keep in mind that Miracle is a crazy effect, and until you actually use this in practice, you might be doubting this, but this can definitely work out in the Chaos season, especially with Elamine just disabling the Bridal Catria teams, so the Brave effects are not going to be as much of a annoyance to her, and the near save armor ally can just take care of the melee matchups, while Celica can be really annoying to the other ranged foes that she's going to be facing. And Soul of Sophia does provide you with null follow-up. Even though we're just going to be tanking with her, the null follow-up is still pretty good to have, and attack speed unity can definitely help you quite a lot just deal with the debuffs, especially with her high attack and speed, and bonus doubler is also pretty nice to have. So this kind of build can really make use of the miracle effect defensively in a competitive game mode. So this is definitely one of the unique things that she can do, and you can also use her in Summoner Duels as well, because she can reliably pulse smoke down the pre-charged specials and also the hardy fighter armors. And because of having Soul of Sophia and the miracle effect, she can survive a lot of far save armors if they do retaliate back. A lot of far save armors don't really run distant counter in their slot A, and they want to focus more on distant defense 4 or the other defensive skills to improve their survivability. So in that case, that can also be really useful. And you can also run Ruptured Sky as your special, which can definitely help you with the far save dragons like Ascended Idun, for example, for just doing more damage to them. And the Null Guard is especially really helpful. And the Null Guard is especially really useful so that you can nuke them. But keep in mind that Deflect Magic armors are still going to be a problem for her if they run Hardy Fighter, because she's not going to be able to do a whole lot of damage to them. Mages don't really have any kind of damage reduction piercing specials, so whenever we get that as an inhittable special, I think Ascended Celica is going to be a lot better as a tank buster. Miracle is a pretty fun effect, so at max investment you can actually run double Mystic Boost. Even with Summoner support, she can only need like 14 HP to really trigger the miracle effect of her weapon, and she can just keep on healing, which can be pretty annoying. Of course, you're going to be losing out on the null follow-up effect, but try to run her with someone like Fallen Lilith, for example, or just another ally who can provide her with the infantry null follow-up, so that she doesn't really die to any kind of auto follow-up enemies. That is definitely something you have to keep in mind. At max investment, she can also be run in Arena with C-Duel Infantry 4, and because of Soul of Sophia being a 300 SP slot B skill, she can actually score 756, just like a 185 BST unit, and the miracle effect cannot be understated for Arena, where she can survive a lot of threats like Duochrome, for example. She can also reliably get into the desperation range of Soul of Sophia, which even legendary Celica struggles, so the miracle effect can be really amazing. Atlas is an Axe Infantry unit who's the instant demote from this batch, and he actually has trainee BST, which means that he has got a lot more BST than the regular, Generation 6 Axe Infantry units. So he can reach 190 BST after his +1 merge. Which can make him a nice unit for arena scoring, and also just as an investment because he's going to be having more stats than his competition. And in that sense, he can have a bit more longevity because Chooser Legends is right around the corner, and usually around Chooser Legends, we have a BST bump. So Atlas is going to be able to keep up with that BST bump because of having this kind of trainee BST. So he does have pretty good HP at base 46 and does have really good attack stat at base 43. His speed is also usable at base 37. It's not really the fastest, but still can be utilized at max investment, and his bulk is also not that bad. He does come with Stout Axe Plus, which does give you 50% damage reduction on foes' first attack if they can double you, and Atlas is not the slowest unit, so this weapon is definitely a bit awkward, especially at high investment. Atlas, he has Earth, Boost, and also Threaten, Attack, Defense too. So yeah, these skills are not the greatest, especially the passives. Though Stout Axe can be useful for some of these slower axe units, but I would argue that Seahorse Axe, which you can get from Somerset, is a lot better weapon for a lot of the slower axe units because they can get the auto follow up from that weapon in both phases, so they can be a lot more flexible and give up on quick riposte. So Stout Axe is a decent inhittable option, but definitely has insane competition. I guess Brave Edelgard is someone who can use Stout Axe, but I'm not really too sure if it's really worth spending 20,000 feathers when she's just going to be getting her weapon refined the next month. So yeah, not the greatest weapon, but still Atlas can function as a merge project. And if you just want to compare him to the existing free-to-play Axe Infantry units, then you can see that he can be competitive with someone like Ymir, not really being as fast as her, but still not being all that bad. Compared to Balthus, he's just a lot faster, and he can also be compared to Basilio and the new Brigand Boss. So many times he's going to be an upgrade of Basilio because of having more resistance than him, and also being a lot faster. And Brigand Boss is available in this batch itself, and Atlas pretty much outclasses him in terms of scoring and even in terms of his stat allocation. Brigand Boss also needs the attack super boon if he wants to score high in arena, and Atlas doesn't really need a super boon or anything like that to get to the 190 BST scoring. And we finally have Gonzalez and Boyd for the comparison as well. So Atlas overall can be nice compared to the other existing Axe Infantry units, but the two main problems with Atlas is going to be that it's going to be hard to get 11 copies of him because he's an instant demote. He has not been a 4-star focus, and it's not been given out as like free copy like some of the other instant demotes, so it's going to be pretty hard for you to get 11 copies of him unless you get really lucky. And the second point is that he doesn't have a preferred weapon, so if you're specifically building him up for arena scoring, then he's always going to be scoring less in that sense compared to the preferred weapon units who can just run the tier 4 slot B skill. So the existence of tier 4 slot B skill itself has kind of devalued the non-preferred arena score bots. If you really want to hyper optimize the scoring, and especially some of these slot B skills in future could actually end up being good. So, preferred weapon users can just score higher with those 300 SP passives compared to someone like Atlas. If you want to build him up, then this could be an option, and the higher with merges and investment you go, the better it is going to be. So he can be used at max investment or high investment with Rain Axe, and he can just run attack speed unity so that he can deal with the debuffs to his offensive stats, and he can also run speed smoke 4 to get that damage reduction, and null follow-up can make productive use of his speed, which is not really all that bad. Bonus Doubler is one of the sacred seals that he can use so that he can be a lot more tanky if you just buff him up fully. And he can also be used with Springy Axe Plus, which is also a pretty good inheritable axe that can give you extra speed. And this kind of build is only recommended for max investment Atlas, especially when you can provide him with some kind of null follow-up support, because you're going to be stacking up a lot of damage reduction with this build, with Vital Astra, with Spurn, Speed Smoke 4. So combining all of that, he can get 75% damage reduction, and if you pair him up with Duochrome or some Infantry Pulse allies, or someone like Ostia Pulse 2 Hector or Asker, then you can try and, just pre-charge his Vital Astra and have that all damage reduction stack up multiplicatively. Again, this is only recommended for a max investment Atlas, because even though he can function with a speedy build, they are just much faster monsters which are going to be invalidating your damage reduction anyways by outspeeding you with several speed points. So again, stack up as much of the speed as you can, and Springy Axe can pretty much protect you from the speed debuffs, which is why it is pretty good with a distant dart build where you cannot exactly run attack speed unity in this slot A. You can also use them with a more player phase oriented build with Shuriken Cleaver Plus or Ninja Massacre. I like Shuriken Cleaver a bit more because of its true damage, and you can pair this up with Surge Sparrow or even Flashing Blade 4 if you just want to get 9 true damage per hit. And Surge Sparrow with Attack Speed Menace could function in the player phase, and he can get the healing with a special like Luna. So this is a completely player phase oriented build that you can run on him because of his offensive stats. You can also use him in arena as a score stick, and if you just want to stick to the melee matchups, then Vulture Axe could be an option with Attack Defense Menace, and you can just try and stack up some speed on him with Attack Speed Ideal, which is going to be pretty easy to do with the visible buffs that he gets out of the Menace skill, and especially with the rally skills. But if you want to invest more for the range matchups, then Distant Counter and Darting Breath is going to be a good option, and you can just run Unbound Axe so that he can have that conditional lull attack defense built into his weapon, and he can basically try and one-shot units with his attack stat and with Darting Breath and 2 cooldown special like Ruptured Sky. He doesn't have the highest resistance, but still it's better than a lot of the Axe Infantry units, so he can function in a similar way to how you would run Ninja Shamir basically, even though he doesn't have as much speed as her. But if you just want to run him as a supportive unit, then Love Candelabra is an option, and you can just run Joint Drive Attack and run a Roost skill and use him more for the support, and he can also function decently well in the combat itself because you're going to be stacking up the speed with Attack Speed Ideal. Shadows of Valentia's is finally here to join her sisters, and she is a lance flyer this time around as well. So she's got tri-edged lance, which does have the new tray skill built into it. So this can free up her slot B skill, and she can just have that inbuilt canto. This weapon does give you +3 attack and can give you +5 to all of your stats in the combat. She can also deal 20% true damage based on her own resistance. And finally, she can get 40% damage reduction on foes' first attack. So at first, it might seem like she is like the alternate version of Spring Maria, who's just a lance unit and uses resistance, but that is not completely true because the damage reduction which Est gets from her weapon is not flat damage reduction like Spring Maria or Asker. It is going to be damage reduction which can be pierced by lethality, Deadeye, and all of those specials and skills, so she's not going to be as bulky as Spring Maria. So just a heads up, because she even has the resistance variant of the flow skill which Spring Maria has got. So here Est has got Flow Feather, which is going to be a player phase only skill which can provide you with the partial null follow up to bypass the follow up negation units, and it can also give you +7 true damage and 7 flat damage reduction based on the difference between 70% of the resistance of Est and the foe. You also need speed to trigger the skill, so only the flyers who have got high enough speed and resistance can make use of this skill, which are not really a lot. So units like Resplendent Sita and Clear are going to be one of the better users of this, and I guess even Camilla, and at some point she's going to be getting the Resplendent version as well, so she can get the extra stats to make use of the skill. So this is again only a player phase skill, so that's why you can just run even more player phase stuff like Sir Sparrow and Blade Session for example. And the Winged Sword and Romphia both have the same weapon refine, so again this can pretty much try and make you heal up with the special and function in the player phase. As for the stats of Est, she doesn't really have the highest HP at base 35. She does have good attack stat at base 41, having Super Boon in it, as well as having 38 base speed with the Super Boon. She does have 37 resistance, which does make her pretty much the best Flow Feather user with her speed and resistance distribution. So that resistance is definitely pretty nice. So that resistance is definitely pretty helpful for making productive use of the true damage from her weapon, as well as making use of Flow Feather. Overall, Est is not really too insane because lance flyers have a lot of competition and she doesn't really stand out too much, but still she is solid because this kind of preferred weapon, especially having that canto built into it, which can allow her to run Flow Feather pretty easily. Because she already has attack resistance push in her base kit, you can try and get some speed with Speed Smoke 3 and Blade Session as a player phase Sacred Seal, and if you want to invest a bit more into her, then Sturdy Impact could pretty much make you have a bootleg null follow-up, because you do have partial null follow-up with Flow Feather, being able to bypass the follow-up negation skills, and then you can stop the foe's follow-up attacks with the impact skill. Sturdy Impact can give her extra defense, which can be useful in the melee matchups, and with the damage reduction and the +10 defense that she can get out of Sturdy Impact, it can definitely help her in the physical melee matchups. Sir Sparrow is going to be the ultimate premium option that you can run in her slot A for a player phase skill, because this can provide you with the healing, which is really great for keeping her healthy, and you can also have attack speed menace, which can help you with the activation of the Flow Feather skill by creating that 12-point stat differential between Est and her opponent's speed. Of course, it doesn't really provide you anything with resistance, but in my opinion it's a lot better to just stack up the offenses on Est instead of, trying to stack up her resistance, because she can always get more mileage out of her attack and speed in a lot more combats than her resistance with the, true damage and Flow Feather. Because if you're going to be stacking up resistance and going to be running resistance skills, then she is going to be losing out on not being as fast as some of the modern matchups need her to be. So that's why I do like plus speed IV on her. And if you want to invest into her insanely heavily and you want to use her in the mixed phase, then this could be an option with Pegasus Flight. So her weapon is actually not that bad for mixed phase usage, because she does have the damage reduction and she gets +5 to all of her stats. So she can run Pegasus Flight for just getting even more attack and defense debuff on the opponent, and this does work in both phases. She already has the canto built into her weapon, so Pegasus Flight doesn't have as much of a opportunity cost as it is for many of the other flyers. And because Est only gets the damage reduction on foe's first attack, the way to make that even more consistent is by making sure that the enemy cannot make a follow-up attack to begin with. So Attack Smoke 4 can help you with that. It also helps you with the activation of the Pegasus Flight skill by giving you the visible buff. Keep in mind that Flow Feather actually takes in the in-combat stats, and then Pegasus Flight has the visible stat check. So these two skills do function a bit differently than each other, and Pegasus Flight does function in both phases while the usual Flow Feather only functions in the player phase. So this is a mixed phase option that you can run on her, especially with the Distant Dart and the damage reduction that she can get. And Speed Smoke 4 is also something that you can run on her, especially if you run a speed boosting skill like Attack Speed Unity on her slot A, or even Attack Speed Catch 4. So this can help you make sure that you can deal with those debuffs, and also you can just stack up the damage reduction with Speed Smoke 4 and her weapon. But keep in mind that you can give her some kind of null follow-up from a support ally like Fallen Lilith again, because not having that null follow-up means that auto follow-up enemies can just double her and even stop her follow-up attacks. Finally, for Arena, she doesn't really need a dual skill, so you can just run Surge Sparrow to get the healing, and you can just run a pretty standard player phase build and make use of the Kanto. Kamui is the 4-star focus unit of this banner, and he's gonna be a pretty popular merge project being in the normal summoning pool. So he has got 181 BST and he has got Upfront Blade Plus as his inheritable weapon. This is basically the sword version of Springy Axe, which can neutralize the penalties to a unit's attack and speed, and it can also give you extra attack and speed in combat. So it's actually a unique inheritable sword compared to a lot of them, because most of the inheritable swords just focus on attack and defense and don't really provide the unit with any kind of speed. So this Upfront Blade Plus can be a good option for a lot of other units who want to run this as their weapon. And Kamui himself can make good use of this while also running a ideal skill in his slot A to boost up his speed. He has got Speed Defense Ideal 3 at 4-star, and this could be useful if you want to fodder off Hugh for his null follow-up and tier 4 version of his ideal skill, or even the Rouse 4 skill that he has got. Kamui also has Attack Defense Oath at 5-star, but his other passive skills are going to be a lot more incentivizing to fodder. As for his stat spread, he has got high base speed of 41 with a super boon on it, and he also has base attack of 38. Like a lot of these Sword Infantry units, he doesn't have the highest resistance at base 22. So he can be compared to the other Sword Infantry units like Yi and also Yanfei. And here Yanfei does come out on top because of having a preferred weapon with distant counter and damage reduction, so he doesn't really have to choose between null follow-up or a damage reduction skill for his slot B like Yi and Kamui. So Yanfei is still a pretty nice merge project if you want to build up a free-to-play Sword Infantry unit. And between Kamui and Yi, they are pretty indistinguishable in my opinion. You just invest into the Sword Infantry unit that you like a lot more. Of course, Kamui is going to be a bit easier to get if you did utilize the 4-star focus. If you want to build up Kamui on a budget, then you can just go with the Speed IV and run a Link skill so that he can get even more buffs with his Oath skill. Attack Speed Form or Bonus Doubler could be run as a Sacred Seal. And at high investments, you can definitely use him with the tier 4 version of his ideal skill from Hugh and also get null follow-up out of him. And at high investment, you can definitely run Speed Smoke 4 on him so that he can get the damage reduction as well as null follow-up in the same kit. Vital Astra is also an option, mainly as a damaging special, not more so for the damage reduction itself, but if you can pre-charge it with Duochrome or some other support, then that's of course really useful. And you can also run him with a complete damage reduction stacking build with Vital Astra, Spurn and Speed Smoke 4, but keep in mind that null follow-up support from someone like Fallen Lilith is going to be needed to function at the max efficiency so that he doesn't get doubled by the auto follow-up units and can stop the extra damage. Kamui's attack and speed are actually pretty nice for running Ninja Katana, so that could be run as well with a player phase build with Surge Sparrow, Attack Speed Menace and Blade Session. You can also use him with a Vulture Blade in Arena for getting more bulk, and this is going to be focusing on the melee matchups. So the solo skill could synergize with the Vulture Blade's solo effect, and you can also run a solo Sacred Seal. Null follow-up is going to be needed in Arena because a lot of units do have the auto follow-up weapons, so this is really helpful for the survival. And finally, if you do want to run him in Arena with a distant counter build, then I really suggest having distant stance because Ninja Corins at Plus and Merge are a huge nuisance for Kamui I can speak from experience because I do use Yanfei at +10 in Arena, and if you run a damage reduction skill, then it's a non-issue in the Ninja Kori matchup for her. So that's why you can just try and have some bulk with the extra resistance from distant stance. And Vital Astra is mainly going to be a damaging special here, but if you can somehow pre-charge it with your free-to-play units, then it is good for getting that damage reduction, of course. And you can also try and tank some of the other green units like E3 for example, who do have auto follow-up. So null follow-up really helps you a lot, but distant counter is not something that he makes very good use of, especially because unlike Yanfei, it is going to be occupying his slot A skill. The final unit from this batch is none other than Brigand Boss, so I don't really want to make a separate video on him because unfortunately he came in the same batch as Atlas, and it's gonna just be me repeating a bunch of points, especially when Atlas can pretty much outclass him in terms of BST, in arena scoring, and also in stat allocation, because Atlas actually ends up having 2 extra speed points and extra resistance than Brigand Boss. So that is actually pretty useful if you just want to optimize at max investment. And if you just want to build up a high attack unit, then Boyd is an option who does have a preferred weapon. So that's always going to be an option. Brigand Boss can only hit 185 BST with his attack super boon or his resistance super boon, and he's not exactly a unit you build up for his combat or for his scoring because he gets outclassed in that aspect, and his fodder is also not really too impressive, with Vulture Axe just being a non-seasonal version of Pelagian Axe. I would only suggest building him up if you like to invest into him with high investment or max investment, and he does have some build flexibility as you'll see here. So he can try and run Seahorse Axe, which can give him the auto follow up, and he can pretty much just focus on his attack and defense, and with this build he can just focus on the enemy phase with the Stance 3 skills, which can give him the guard effect. So that is pretty good for the bulk with his defense and lull attack defense just ignoring the visible attack of the enemy, and then attack smoke 4 giving you the follow-up negation effect and also giving you visible buffs. So this is something that he can do for just focusing on his attack and defense, and he can also try and stack up his speed actually at max investment. So Springy Axe Plus is something that he can run with attack speed ideal, giving you that amazing +9 speed. And Sweet Smoke 4 could be useful for getting that damage reduction along with null follow up in the same build. And this is a pretty standard build that I've went over with Atlas as well. So you can try and ascend his speed asset actually if you want to use this kind of build. And stacking up more speed is always going to be helpful. And if you have to make a choice between null follow up or damage reduction, then I do prefer null follow up a bit more here for just the flexibility in the matchups. And you can also run him with a pretty interesting Bulwark build as well, which is crazy high investment. So if you want to use him with distant counter, then you can actually try and invest into his resistance, which is a super boon, and you can just try and stack that up with the refine of Seahorse Axe. So you don't really have to run quick riposte, and instead you can run attack defense Bulwark, which can not only provide you with that obstruct effect, but also give you the healing. So you don't really need to run Mystic Boost as a Sacred Seal, and you can run Warding Breath for the special acceleration. Finally, if you want to use him in Arena, then there are a couple of options. You can run him as a support unit with Love Candelabra. You can also focus on his melee matchups with Rain Axe Plus. And then finally, if you want to run him with distant counter or distant stance, then Seahorse can give you that auto follow up. And lull attack defense can be helpful in Arena where people do use their rally skills. And Rain Axe with Joint Drive speed can actually provide some nice speed support to your allies as well. Make sure to share this video with your friends if they're trying to build up any of these units. I went over a lot of the build options, and if you enjoyed this video, then make sure to leave a like and a comment. Helps me tremendously, and if you really enjoyed, you could always support me directly by using super thanks or by becoming a YouTube member. And for more fave videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell, because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as Brigand Boss after seeing Atlas in the same batch. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.